Just like last week, I would recommend that you read all the information at the top of the page or whatever precedes the passage itself. That could give you important clues as to what the passage is about. Then read the entire passage to successfully answer the questions. Also, it is best if you read the question and then all the answer choices before you choose the best answer. So this one is from the essay My Life with a Field Guide by Diana Koppel-Smith. So she says, I was 17 when it started. My family was on vacation, and one day we went on a nature walk led by a young man a few years older than I. Probably I wanted to get his attention. I'm sure I did. So I pointed to a flower and asked, What's that? Oh, just an aster, he said. Was there a hint of a sniff as he turned away? There was. It was just an aster, and I was a total ignoramus. And I remember the aster. Its rays were a brilliant purple, its core a dense coin of yellow velvet. It focused light as a crystal will. It faced the sun. It was the sun's echo. Later that day, a book with a green cover lay on the arm of a chair under an apple tree. It was the same volume that our guide had carried as he marched with us through the woods. The book had been left there by itself. It was a thing of power. In the thin summer shadow of the tree, quivering like a veil, the book was revealed, and I reached for it. A Field Guide to Wildflowers, Peterson and McKinney, its cover said. Its backside was ruled like a measuring tape. Its inside was full of drawings of flowers. By the end of that week, I had my own copy. I have it still. Over the next several years, this field guide would become my closest companion, a slice of worldview, as indispensable as eyes or hands. I didn't arrive at this intimacy right away, however. This wasn't going to be an easy affair for either of us. I'll give you an example of how it went. After I'd owned the Petersons for about a week, I went on a hike with some friends up a little mountain, taking the book along. Halfway up the mountain, there by the trailside was a yellow flower, a nice opportunity to take my guide for a test drive. Go on ahead, I said to my hiking companions. I'll be a minute. Famous last words. I had already figured out the business of the book's colored tabs. I turned in an authoritative way to the yellow part and began to flip through. By the time the last of my friends had disappeared up the trail, I'd arrived at a page where things looked right. 5 petals? Yes. Pinnate leaves? Whatever. Buttercup? There are, amazingly, 11 buttercups. Who would have thought? However hard I tried to make it so, my item was not one of them. Next page. Aha! This looked more like it. Bushy cinquefoil? No, leaves not quite right, are they? As the gnats descended, I noticed that there were 6 more pages ahead, each packed with 5-petaled yellow flowers. St. John's wort, loose stripes, puccoons. Why I insisted in carrying it around and consulting its crowded pages at every opportunity, I have no idea. The book was stubborn. Well, I was stubborn too. That was part of it. And I had no choice, really, not if I wanted to get in. A landscape may be handsome in the aggregate, but this book led to the particulars, and that's what I wanted. A less complete guide would have been easier to start with, but more frustrating in the end. A more complete book would have been impossible for me to use. So I persisted in wrestling with the Petersons, and thus by slow degrees, the crowd of plant stuff in the world became composed of individuals. As it did, the book changed. Its cover was stained by water and snack food, the spine grew invitingly lax, and some of the margins sprouted cryptic annotations. By the time the next summer came, I had fully discovered the joy of the hunt, and every new species had its trophy of data, name and place and date to be jotted down. If I'd found a flower before, I was happy to see it again. I often addressed it with enthusiasm. Hi there, Solidago ispida. I discovered early on that a plant's Latin name is a name of power by which the plant can be uniquely identified among different spoken tongues across continents and through time. The genus name lashes it firmly to its closest kin, while its species name describes a personal attribute. Rubrum meaning red, officinale meaning medicinal, odoratus meaning smelling, and so on. It all makes such delightful sense. My friend Julie and I identified individual plants in our rambles, but from the particulars we began to know wholes. Bogs held one community, montane forests held another, and the plants they held in common were clues to intricate dramas of climate change and continental drift. So from plant communities it followed that the grand scheme of things, when they came our way, arrived rooted in real place and personal experience. Quaternary geology, biogeography, evolutionary biology, all lay on the road that we had begun to travel. Now for 21, this is a general question about the purpose of the passage. Choice B is too specific. This isn't just telling us about how the author likes asters, a certain type of flower. Choice C is also incorrect because this reading selection barely mentions other people. Choice D is incorrect because the author's career and its relative profitability are never mentioned. Therefore, choice A is the best answer. This woman is telling readers how she began to love identifying flowers and how that led her on to a love of science in general. 22 is a question about the young man mentioned in the first 3 paragraphs. Go back and reread those paragraphs and the dialogue therein. So, 1, 2, 3. When the author asked him about a particular flower, he responded, just an aster. You can imagine his tone of voice, and that is exactly what the question is asking. Letter H is correct, condescension, but it might be hard to figure out if you don't have a big vocabulary. The word condescension means talking down to someone with an attitude of superiority. Look at the 3rd paragraph. She describes his reaction as a sniff, like he's looking down his nose at her. It's as if the guide thinks of this as basic knowledge, and the author was stupid not to know it. She even uses the word ignoramus. 23 is a question of close reading. The 8th paragraph ends with this same list of flowers. St. John's wort, loosestrife puccuns, but those were all listed on pages in the field guide that she hadn't even gotten to yet. So the reader never knows what she actually decided was the right name and species for that particular yellow flower. Choice D is the best answer. 25 is similar to the other questions that we looked at in weeks 1 and 2 of Activate. It asks the test taker to go back to a specific line in the passage. I would recommend you read the whole sentence, not just that one line. You might also want to reread the sentence before and after the one in question. So we read, the book was stubborn. Well, I was stubborn too. That was part of it. And I had no choice, really, not if I wanted to get in. A landscape may be handsome in the aggregate, but this book led to the particulars, and that's what I wanted. The author wants to be knowledgeable of all the details, so she means that she wanted to get in on all the information. So choice C is the best answer. Truly understand the subject. For 27, this is another question of specific details and close reading. In lines 25 and 26, if you go back up to that, the author states, over the next several years, this field guide would become my closest companion. So, choice D is the correct